The university corridor buzzed with students who had just finished their classes. A few girls glanced toward a tall figure walking briskly down the hallway with an expressionless face, Jungkook. His name was practically legendary among the students, handsome, smart, and untouchable. "No girl has ever been able to get close to him," muttered one of the female students with a sigh, watching Jungkook from afar. But one girl never gave up, Nara, a popular girl with stunning looks and high self-confidence. She quickly stepped forward to match Jungkook's pace, her smile blooming. "Jungkook, have you done Professor Kang's assignment? Maybe we can go over it together at the cafe this afternoon, Jungkook didn't even look at her. "I did it on my own. No need to go over it," he replied curtly, not slowing his pace. Nara kept smiling, though her eyes betrayed a hint of disappointment. "You're always alone, you know? Don't you ever get lonely?" "I don't like crowds. Besides, I have a few friends. I'm not always alone, like you said," Jungkook answered quietly, coldly, before turning toward the stairs and leaving Nara standing still with a smile that slowly faded. Nara sighed. She knew Jungkook had a few friends, but they were all guys. Why is it so hard to get close to you?" she muttered in frustration. Some students who witnessed the scene whispered among themselves. Everyone knew how cold Jungkook was when it came to girls. Inside the classroom, a few girls were secretly glancing at Jungkook, who sat at his desk opening his laptop. One of them gathered the courage to approach him. "Hi, Jungkook. I heard you're really good at statistics. Could you maybe help me a bit with last week's graph assignment?" Without looking at her, he replied, "Ask the teaching assistant. They can help better. My knowledge is limited." The girl forced a smile and backed away, her face showing disappointment. Meanwhile, in the corner of the class, Yin was quietly watching from behind her notebook. She knew well that Jungkook's attitude wasn't arrogance. It was a boundary he had always drawn with every girl. Yes, Yin knew Jungkook quite well. They went to the same high school, even in the same class. They weren't particularly close, but often ended up in the same group projects and shared a few moments in class. A few days later, the afternoon sky was clear, though the spring breeze swayed the leaves gently. The campus had grown quiet during lunch hour, with most students choosing to gather in cafes or study lounges. But in the quietest corner of the university, the garden behind the economics building, Jungkook sat awkwardly on a bench beneath a large tree. His hand kept fidgeting in and out of his hoodie pocket. He looked nervous, unlike his usual cold and untouchable self. But today was different, because today, he planned to confess his feelings to the girl he had secretly loved for a long time. Not long after, Yin arrived, wearing a white blouse and gray slacks. Her hair was half-tied, her face calm though her eyebrows were slightly furrowed, confused by the text Jungkook had sent earlier. "Can we meet for a bit? Behind the garden." "Why did you suddenly call me out here? Is something wrong?" Yin asked as she sat down beside him on the bench. Jungkook slowly turned his head, looked at her briefly, then lowered his gaze. "I have something to tell you." Yin gave a small nod. "Okay?" For a moment, memories from the past flashed through Jungkook's mind, back to their high school days. Yin is sitting not far from him, always with a novel and colorful notes. Her soft laughter, her graceful demeanor, things that had always caught his quiet attention. He had never been close to Yin back then, but she had never left his memory. And now, being in the same class again, in the same university and department, that emotional distance he had always kept still lingered. Feelings he tried to bury only grew stronger and harder to ignore. Jungkook took a slow breath. "Do you remember in high school, when we were in the same group for the history project?" Yin chuckled softly. "The one where you didn't show up for the presentation, so I had to speak alone in front of the class?" she said with a playful pout. "Yeah, that one." Jungkook smiled sheepishly. "I'm sorry about that." "Too late. That was 3 years ago," Yin replied half-jokingly. Jungkook winced. "But I did apologize, even if it was just by text." Yin stifled a laugh. "Still, an apology isn't enough. I should have punished you to make it even." Their eyes met, and they both laughed softly. But soon, the laughter faded. Silence returned, this time carrying a heavier tension. Jungkook looked straight at her. "I'm serious, Yin. I asked to meet you today because I can't keep delaying this. I've been holding something in for a long time." Yin looked at him curiously. "Actually, I like you." 2 seconds. 3, 5. Yin froze in place. Their eyes met, and for the first time, she saw a look in Jungkook's eyes that wasn't cold. It was deep and sincere. Since high school, I've always noticed you. I just never knew how to get closer, because you never really opened a space for it either. But now that we're classmates again, it feels stupid to stay silent. Yin looked away briefly, biting her lower lip. Her heart was pounding. Jungkook, she said softly, I actually like you too. Jungkook stared at her, stunned. Seriously, Yin? He asked again, just to be sure. Honestly, he hadn't expected this. Turns out the girl in front of him was just as good at hiding her feelings. Yin blushed. Yes, seriously. Why would I lie? Jungkook broke into a genuine smile, a rare sight on his usually composed face. But before he could speak again, Yin continued. But if we start dating, I want to keep it a secret from everyone on campus, even our classmates. Jungkook stiffened. Keep it a secret? Yeah, I'm not comfortable with your fans. They're intense and kind of aggressive. I don't want to be a target of gossip or attention. Silence. The wind blew gently, ruffling Jungkook's hair as he lowered his head, thinking. Of course, he wanted the world to know that Yin was his, but if that meant making her uncomfortable, then he'd hold himself back. Alright, he said quietly. As long as you're mine, I can pretend in front of others. Yin looked at him, touched. Thank you, Jungkook. I'm really happy you understand. I should be the one saying that. He gently touched her fingers. For a moment, he couldn't resist reaching out to the girl he had loved silently for so long before quickly pulling his hand back. But remember, even if I can't say it in front of everyone, I'm serious about my feelings. Yin nodded with a smile. I know. Jungkook exhaled deeply. He looked away briefly before his gaze returned to her, now softer than ever. But don't blame me if I can't stop sneaking glances at you in class. Yin giggled softly, then held his hand. I won't. Jungkook looked at their joined hands, then whispered, I'm so happy. Because starting today, you're mine. Yin blushed and smiled. And you're mine, she replied gently. 1 week later. It was the day they had been waiting for, their first weekend together since officially becoming a couple. They had made plans to spend the whole day together, and now here they were, at one of the shopping malls in the heart of Seoul. The theater wasn't too crowded. They bought 2 tickets for a movie, then went inside with drinks and a bucket of popcorn to share. Jungkook had purposely chosen seats in the very back row. He wanted to feel as free as possible with Yin, without worrying about anyone watching them. As the thriller movie played and the audience focused on the screen, Jungkook and Yin sat silently side by side. His hand never left hers, occasionally stroking her fingers gently. Half an hour passed, and when Yin turned to say something, she found Jungkook already looking at her. What is it? Yin whispered, careful not to disturb others. Nothing. You just look really beautiful today. Her face instantly turned red, but before she could respond, Jungkook leaned in and placed a quick kiss on her right cheek, soft, like a breeze that only wanted to brush her skin for a moment. You. Yin widened her eyes slightly. Sorry, I've been wanting to kiss your cheek for a while now, Jungkook whispered playfully, a mischievous smile on his face. Yin could only blush and then rested her head on his shoulder for the rest of the film. After the movie ended, they had dinner at a restaurant on the same floor of the mall. Jungkook sat across from Yin, playing with his chopsticks while occasionally gazing at her in silence. Noticing this, Yin raised her eyebrows. Why are you staring at me like that? Jungkook shrugged, just enjoying the view. Yin pretended to stir her rice. You always know how to make me embarrassed. Jungkook chuckled, because I like seeing you blush. Their conversation flowed easily. They chatted about strict professors, piles of assignments, and other random things. Jungkook listened attentively, not just out of politeness, but genuinely enjoying the way Yin talked to him. After paying the bill and leaving the restaurant, they got into Jungkook's car parked in the basement. It was quiet inside as he hadn't started the engine yet. Jungkook turned to her. Should I take you home now? But Yin shook her head softly and rested it on his shoulder. I don't want to go home yet, she whispered. I want to be with you a little longer. He looked forward, a small smile forming on his lips. His heart warmed. You know, you make it really hard for me to say no. Without another word, he started the engine and drove slowly through the now slightly quieter city streets. Jungkook parked near a city park lit by soft streetlights. They walked together at a relaxed pace, hand in hand, down a stone path lined with trees on both sides. The night air feels so nice, really soothing, Yin said softly. Jungkook glanced at her. That's because we're together. You're flirting with me, aren't you? She laughed, but tightened her grip on his hand. Jungkook just responded with a soft chuckle. They sat on a bench for a while, taking in the night view and the soft glow of the moon. Yin leaned against Jungkook's shoulder, her arm wrapped around his affectionately, while her one finger absent-mindedly traced abstract patterns on his thigh, meaningless lines, yet their closeness felt deeply comforting. "If I act like I don't care at campus, please don't get upset," Yin said gently, her fingers still moving, her arms still clinging to his. Jungkook turned to kiss her temple. "I don't mind. As long as you hold me like this when we're outside campus, I can handle pretending in class." Yin giggled. World's most patient boyfriend, Jungkook. "Not the most patient," he said as he wrapped his arm around her waist, "just the one who loves you the most." Yin only nodded slowly. "I also want to be close to you on campus, but I'm not ready yet." "That's okay, baby. I'll wait until you are." The ride home was peaceful. Soft jazz played through the car speakers, and the city lights reflected on the windows. When they arrived in front of Yin's house, the street was quiet. Jungkook didn't turn off the engine, but before Yin could open the door, Jungkook called her softly. "Yin." He turned to look at her, his gaze lingering. "Today is the day I've been waiting for the most." Yin smiled. "I'm happy too. Honestly, I still don't feel satisfied. I want to spend more time with you." Jungkook chuckled. "If you keep saying things like that, I might just recklessly ask you to move in with me. Would you?" Yin giggled, giving his arm a gentle pinch. "Don't be crazy." But Jungkook didn't answer. He turned his body more toward her, silently gazing at her. Her face looked calm, so beautiful under the soft glow of the streetlight. Slowly, without many words, Jungkook raised his hand and gently touched Yin's lips with his thumb. "May I?" he whispered. Yin looked at him for a moment, then gave a small nod. In seconds, their lips met in a slow, deep kiss. Warm, gentle, full of feeling. When they pulled away, Yin still had her eyes closed. Jungkook smiled and kissed her forehead, this time longer. "I love you so much, baby, so much." Yin opened her eyes and looked at Jungkook. "I love you too." Jungkook gently caressed her head before finally saying, "Go inside now, it's getting late." She nodded. "Drive safe, okay? And don't forget to let me know once you get home." And just like that, their relationship grew quickly outside of campus. They spent their weekends together, going on dates at cafes, watching movies, or simply strolling through the park. Jungkook, who seemed cold and distant at school, became warm and affectionate when he was alone with Yin. He loved making her laugh, listening to her stories about her days, and sharing his thoughts about the future. Yin found herself falling even deeper for the side of Jungkook that only she got to see. One evening, Jungkook invited Yin to have dinner at his parents' house. Yin was nervous, even though Jungkook assured her that his mother, Jungkook, was a kind and lovely woman. He also mentioned that his father was away on a business trip, so she would only be meeting his mom. Upon arriving at the Jeon family home, Yin was warmly welcomed by Jungkook's mother, a graceful woman in her 50s who exuded warmth and intelligence. In fact, this wasn't the first time Yin had seen Jungkook's mother. Jungkook was one of the senior professors in their university's economics department. However, she only taught 3rd and 4th year students, so Yin had never had her in class. Still, tonight felt different because Yin wasn't visiting as a student, but as Jungkook's girlfriend. Dinner went by in a warm and pleasant atmosphere. Mrs. Jeon asked a lot about Yin's college life, her favorite courses, and her interest in business. Though she was nervous at first, Yin answered honestly, and gradually started to feel more at ease. Jungkook sat beside her, occasionally squeezing her hand under the table. The smile on his face showed just how happy he was to see the two most important women in his life talking comfortably. When the conversation started to slow down and they sipped on warm tea after the main course, Yin politely said, "Thank you for the dinner tonight, Professor." Jungkook's mother chuckled softly and raised an eyebrow. "Oh, sweetheart, please don't call me Professor anymore. You've been saying that all night. It feels way too formal." Yin flinched slightly, surprised. "Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just used to it, because at the campus." "I understand," Jungkook's mother replied gently, "but you're not here as a student, are you? You're Jungkook's girlfriend, and maybe even his future wife someday." Yin's cheeks flushed instantly, and she glanced shyly at Jungkook, who was quietly smiling with a slightly embarrassed face. "Just call me Mom," his mother continued with a warm smile. "It's more comfortable." Yin was still a little awkward, but a warm feeling bloomed in her chest. Being accepted by her partner's parent was a big deal, and being asked to call her Mom was something she never expected would come this soon. "All right, Mom," she said softly. Mrs. Jeon nodded with satisfaction, her eyes sparkling. There we go. Now it feels more like family, doesn't it? Jungkook turned to Yin with a proud smile and whispered, "That's it, you've been officially accepted." Yin gently pinched his arm under the table, making him grin. Just then, a maid entered the dining room carrying a large plate of tiramisu handmade by Jungkook's mother. "This is an old recipe. It's Jungkook's favorite," she explained while placing the first slice on Yin's plate. Jungkook laughed. "When I was a kid, I could finish 2 big portions all by myself. And he would always hide under the table when he knew he had to go to the dentist," his mother added teasingly. "Mom," Jungkook protested, making Yin giggle. They continued chatting about Jungkook's childhood, future plans, and even Yin's ideas for a small business she wanted to start. Every word Yin said was listened to attentively by his mother, without the slightest trace of the professor-like air she had on campus. That night ended with sincere laughter and warm smiles. In the car on the way home, Yin leaned against Jungkook's shoulder and whispered, "I really love tonight." "Me too," Jungkook replied, kissing her temple. "My mom seemed to really like you too." Since that night, Yin's relationship with the Jeon family grew even closer. She often visited Jungkook's house, and his mother always welcomed her warmly. Yin gradually became comfortable calling her mom, and she began to feel a bond like that between a mother and daughter. On campus, they continued to keep their relationship a secret. Jungkook and Yin acted like just regular classmates, occasionally talking about assignments or classes, but nothing more. They intentionally kept their distance in public areas of the university. However, keeping this secret wasn't easy, especially with Nara growing more suspicious and constantly observing Jungkook's behavior. She noticed how Jungkook, who used to rush out of class, sometimes lingered in the hallway waiting for Yin, even if only for a moment. She noticed how his gaze would occasionally follow Yin in the classroom, and the way his tone softened every time he spoke to Yin, unlike when he spoke to her or other classmates. She also noticed Yin usually composed, sometimes blushing while talking to Jungkook. To Nara, who was obsessed with him, it was clear this was no ordinary friendship. Her jealousy grew stronger. She didn't know exactly what was going on, but she was certain something was happening between Jungkook and Yin that she wasn't aware of. In Nara's eyes, Yin had become a threat. Until one day, Nara confronted Yin outside the library, right after the semester exams had ended. "Park Yin," Nara called out coldly. Yin stopped, slightly surprised to see Nara waiting for her. "Yes, Nara, what is it?" Nara folded her arms across her chest, her eyes holding a hidden hostility. "I came to give you a warning." "A warning?" Yin asked, pretending not to understand. Her heart was pounding. "Stay away from Jungkook," Nara said bluntly. "I know you might feel special because he talks to you, but it means nothing. Jungkook's not interested in girls like you." Yin stayed silent, looking at Nara. She could have told her the truth, that she was Jungkook's girlfriend and that he was interested in her. But she didn't want to cause a stir if the news spread. Yin's silence only irritated Nara more. She took it as guilt, or maybe fear. "Listen, Yin, I've been going after Jungkook for a long time. I'm way more suited to him than you. So, back off before you regret it." "I don't know what you're talking about," Yin finally replied, trying to keep her voice calm. "Jungkook and I are just classmates." Nara scoffed. "Don't lie. It's obvious from the way you act. But hear me loud and clear. Whatever this is, end it. Jungkook is mine." Yin could only sigh. She wasn't going to argue with Nara. It would be pointless. But to Nara, Yin's lack of resistance meant submission. That she would obey and step away from Jungkook. Satisfied, Nara turned and walked away, feeling victorious. The new semester began, and a surprise awaited the third-year economics students. One of their core subjects, development economics, would be taught by a well-known professor, none other than Jungkook's mother, Professor Jeon Haran. Everyone on campus knew she was Jungkook's mother. As Professor Haran entered the classroom on the first day, whispers spread among the students. They exchanged murmurs about how elegant and charismatic she was. Jungkook and Yin shared a glance. They both knew this was going to be interesting, maybe even a bit nerve-wracking. Professor Haran began her lecture with a warm introduction. She explained her background, her teaching style, and what students could expect from the course. Throughout the lecture, she encouraged interaction, asking students to raise questions and share opinions. And of course, among all the students, Nara tried her hardest to stand out, eager to impress Jungkook and, more importantly, to make a good impression on his mother. The classroom discussion was growing increasingly intense. The students were enthusiastic, passionately sharing arguments about the economic development model being discussed that day. Professor Haran encouraged an open debate, urging them to think critically. Moments later, in the middle of the intellectual atmosphere, Yin raised her hand. Professor Heron nodded and gestured for her to speak. Professor, Yin began, her voice steady yet polite. I'd like to ask about the structuralist development model. If applied to developing countries with severe regional disparities, wouldn't it risk strengthening central dependence over local areas and potentially hinder the growth of the informal sectors that are currently expanding? The room fell silent. It was a heavy question, challenging even for senior students. Some quickly took notes while others turned to look at Yin in quiet admiration. But in the middle of all that seriousness, Yin's brain suddenly betrayed her. Having grown used to calling Professor Heron a more familiar name at home, her tongue slipped. So, about its impact, Mom. I'm sorry. Yin froze, her eyes wide in shock. The previously intense room went completely still. All eyes turned to her, then to Professor Heron. Even Jungkook, sitting a few rows behind, had to cover his mouth to stifle his laughter. The other students exchanged glances, then looked back at Professor Heron, who appeared surprisingly calm, her lips even curled into a smile. Then they looked at Jungkook. The usually stoic guy now had his back slightly shaking, clearly trying to suppress his laughter. He didn't seem the least bit disturbed that someone had just called his mother Mom in public. None of these subtle reactions escaped the curious eyes of the other students. What is going on here? The unspoken question lingered in the room. Yin could barely breathe. Oh my god, I just called her Mom, in front of the class? But then, the unexpected happened. Professor Heron chuckled softly. Her voice was light, completely free of irritation. It's all right, Yin, she said kindly, her tone softening the tension. That sort of thing happens. Then, noticing the confusion among the students, Professor Heron clasped her hands and addressed the entire room. Well then, everyone, she began with a composed tone. I don't think what just happened needs to be blown out of proportion or taken negatively. The students were confused but alert. Nara sat up straight, her jaw clenched, tension radiating from her face. Park Yin, Professor Heron continued, turning toward Yin with a gentle smile, is dating my son, Jungkook. Perhaps some of you already know, she's actually my future daughter-in-law. The classroom erupted into hushed gasps, not loud, but full of disbelief. Whispers and exchanged glances flew around the room, darting from Jungkook to Yin and then back to Professor Heron. Yin has been close to me for a while now, she continued without hesitation. At home, she calls me Mom, so it's understandable if she slipped up here. I hope you all understand. The room fell into another silence, but this time it had a different tone. Some were genuinely surprised, others seemed supportive, and some were clearly upset. Nara was the most predictable. Her face turned pale, her eyes narrowed in disbelief, as if the entire world she had built for herself had crumbled with just a few sentences. The threats she had once whispered to Yin now seemed meaningless. Not only was Yin Jungkook's girlfriend, she was also accepted by his mother. Meanwhile, Jungkook simply grinned, shooting a playful but challenging look at Yin. He said nothing, but his eyes clearly spoke. Now everyone knows you're mine. Yin returned his smile with a slightly pouty one of her own, her cheeks still burning red. She knew she couldn't blame anyone but herself for accidentally revealing their relationship, but strangely enough, part of her felt relieved. From that day on, Jungkook and Yin no longer had to hide their relationship on campus. They walked hand in hand through the corridors, shared lunch in the cafeteria, and sat next to each other during classes. People stared, whispers still followed them, especially from the girls who used to admire Jungkook, and from Nara, who now had no choice but to accept the bitter truth. But Professor Heron's warm and public support gave them a sense of protection. No one dared to openly pick on Yin after hearing Professor Heron refer to her as her future daughter-in-law. That was more than just a statement. It was a clear endorsement. Jungkook no longer seemed like the cold, distant guy he once was. His smile appeared more often, especially when he looked at Yin. He had become more open, and his popularity no longer felt like a burden, because now, he had someone to share everything with.